Hello, welcome to the Farm Finance Show. On today's show, I'll be talking about how to predict yields using the drought monitor from the University of Nebraska. Today, I'll be talking about how to use the drought monitor report from the University of Nebraska as a way to predict wheat yields in Kansas. For those of you who've been reading my Ag Manager site, you know that I have been predicting yields for wheat and other crops based on the NASS crop condition report, which basically goes out every week on the weekend, and they rate the crop as either excellent, good, fair, or poor, and then I develop kind of a sliding scale from that to come up with an estimate for yields. And I've been doing that now for several years, and anyone interested is welcome to go to Ag Manager and look at those specific publications. But there's also another set of data that comes out weekly, and that's the U.S. Drought Monitor report. It comes out, I believe it's compiled on Thursday and reported a couple of days later. And that is measuring, instead of the crop conditions, it's actually measuring the amount of soil moisture, and they basically have the levels of drought. So if it doesn't have any drought, or if there's surplus, it basically has a no score or no points. And then they go from various levels of drought after that. It goes from abnormally dry to moderately dry to severe dry to extreme drought and an exceptional drought, and they have a color coding system. Here's the page from that shows just Kansas, and probably most of you have all seen this type of graph where it's color coded, and again, the darker the colors, the less likely you add it, and we get something that looks like this. This is the current state of Kansas as of April 16th, and I will be using these various classifications for the state to come up with a yield estimate. The one advantage of using the U.S. Drought Monitor report is that they actually rate the drought monitor conditions on a county level basis, whereas when NASS does the crop condition report, they are only reporting the crop condition for the entire state. They kind of average things together. So I can get a little more detail with this report than I can in some other things. So again, this is the current condition, as not shouldn't be a surprise from anybody from Kansas. Is it looks like we're having a dry spring again, but that's not necessarily all that unusual for Kansas. We tend to be dry quite a bit. Things can improve, obviously, before wheat harvest gets here, so things could improve dramatically before then. But here's the current state of Kansas as of April the 16th. You see most of the drought area, the more the severe parts, are here in the center part of the state, specifically the south center areas where we're having basically this level right here, this kind of severe drought situation, and a little bit less over here, and there's a couple of parts of the state where there's not any drought, but again, a very, very small area. We may be wondering, how does this compare to maybe to past years? So again, this is just a specific week, and as again, it may not be a surprise, there's a lot of years in Kansas, the second week of April, where it's been pretty dry. Now we're down here at the bottom. This is a Likert scale, which basically will take those ratings and put them on a scale by the percent in each of these different categories. So you can see over here the two most severe stages. We don't have any ground yet in this level 4 drought, but we do have some level 3 and level 2. These last two categories get added up, and this shows up the percent here. So basically the red and this kind of orangish color are what we're seeing showing up right here, and we only have 7% of the state that's kind of fitting into those two categories. You can see what happened last year, which was a very dry year. We had 69% of our ground in Kansas was in these most severe two categories, and very little ground that was out of drought or that was in the less severe drought. So again, where we are right now, we basically have in the middle area right here, you're seeing for percent is the percent of ground in this level D1 category, and then we have D0 and none drought, which is the two numbers showing up here with the percent in the right-hand column. So we have about 46% of our ground in Kansas right now in the D1 level, and then 7% above that, and we have 47% that's either in the D0 or the none category. So we're not really looking too bad when you compare it to some other years. Now certainly there have been some really good years like 2009 and 10 where we didn't have any ground really in any kind of drought. We had mostly a none or D0, which is a very good situation. But you can see what happened last year in 2023, which turned to be a very dry year and ended up with some kind of poor wheat yields. We did have a lot of ground that was in the very severe drought. I think there's only one year out of the last 20 where it was really worse, and that was in 2013 where it was really, really dry. You see right here, practically the whole state was in a pretty severe drought at that point. So we're not near any war like we were last year, these other years. I would say just eyeballing this, we're kind of in a normal situation for the spring. Again, A lot will happen before wheat harvest, so things could improve. So, but we can use this to kind of give an idea of what the yields might be. It's not going to be a perfect estimate, but it does give some ideas, because when it's dry now, there's a good chance it's going to be dry later on here, and you'll see that in my forecast as we go forward here. Well, here's my prediction based on that, and I'll have more details in the Ag Manager publication, also probably a further farm finance show about how this yield thing actually works. But when I've done this on a county level basis, I found out there was such variability within the counties that I didn't get a lot of good predictions doing this on a county level basis. So I combined things and actually did estimates on a crop reporting district level, because it does put a few counties together to come up with an estimate. And you can see what my prediction is and how accurate my model is predicting so far based on what these different crop reporting districts are showing. So again, this trend yield line is looking at the past 22 years. It goes back basically as far as I have drought monitor data, which that goes back to about the year 2000. And then looking at the trend line yield, so there's a little bit of positive trend line increase over time. You can see what the trend line yield, which would be a normal year, what the yields would be in these different crop reporting districts right here. And then I also get a lower bounds, the most likely in this column, and then the upper bounds right here, and then how accurate my model is predicting. So you can see based on this, the northwest part of the state, basically the trend line yield, what we would expect in an average yield would be about 50.2 bushels per acre. My model is expecting a little bit better than that, 52.5, with a range of 49 to 55, and the R-square is actually pretty good. Now the north central, again, we're expecting maybe just slightly under north central, but again, the model here doesn't predict very well. So this is still an artifact of even moving up to the crop reporting district. I still get some crop reporting districts that do a better job of predicting than other ones here. So the north central is one where it doesn't predict all that well. Same with the northeast, kind of maybe a little bit better than average yield. West central above with a pretty good R-square. The central part of the state we're below, and again a small R-square. East central we're a little bit above. Southwest high. South central low, quite a bit lower here, 3 bushels per acre, and then southeast right about at trend line exactly. Well, I mean, if you just eyeball this and say, okay, we got 9 districts here, it looks like the majority of them are actually above the average, which would be true, but unfortunately our 2 biggest areas for growing wheat in the state, based on last year's wheat number, would be the central part of the state and the south central part of the state. And you'll see in both those regions we are fairly well below what the trend line yield here. So in the center part of the state, we're a good 2 bushels per acre lower than what the trend line yield is supposed to be in normal years. And the south central, which you remember from the previous page, that's actually the driest region of the state. We are a good 3 bushel below what it was the trend line yield, and the south central I think is actually the biggest area for growing wheat in the state, with the central right behind it. So our 2 biggest areas in the state are right now showing the potential for being quite a bit below the average yields here. So again, it's still early, but the trend right now is not too promising for those 2 areas. So hopefully we'll get some more rain and things will improve over time. Well, if I aggregate all these numbers back together here and come up with a state average yield, you see, and again, I'm weighting it by how much wheat acres we have in each of these crop reporting districts. I'm getting a state average prediction of 42.6, which would be just a little bit below the state average for the state. This is actually a bushel per lower compared to my estimate, where I'm just using the crop condition report from NASS here. So again, they're somewhat in agreement that this is a little bit lower. The range is actually greater here, 31.9 to 46.2 compared to what I got from the NASS assessment. Again, that's probably more of a data issue than anything else, because the data is not quite complete, because I am having to use county level numbers, and there aren't quite as many counties reporting for this as there would be for the state numbers. So again, this is what my current estimate is as of April the 16th. It's looking like a little bit drier than normal conditions out there, which would translate so far into a little bit lower than average. But again, certain areas right now are shaping up to be kind of another bad year, especially the south central and the center part of the state. I'll have more of these reports throughout the spring, and I'll try to do maybe on a semi-weekly basis for this, because these numbers do come out weekly. So thanks for watching this show of the Farm Finance, talking about yield predictions using the Nebraska Drought Monitor. Again, if you want to follow me for more information, visit me on Twitter, either at My handle at Ivandov, which I sometimes go in other areas besides farm finance, and then ag financing, which I just tend to focus on the finance of the agricultural work. And you can subscribe to my farm finance show on YouTube at little_pond_farm. So I hope to see you around for future episodes. Thanks for watching.